live.
All right, everybody, sorry about the late delay there. For whatever reason, the internet was not working on that computer, so I had to kind of work around it. But I think I got everything set up. First things first, I kind of wanted to reiterate what I talked about on last class on Thursday about what's coming up the next couple of weeks. So first things first, so exam two will be opened on October 29th. So remember, October 29th will be the first day that the exam's open. You can take it on that day, or you can wait all the way till November 5th is when the exam closes. Now remember, I'm giving you an extended amount of time to complete the exam, so there are no excuses for you missing the exam, for you not taking the exam by the deadline, November 5th, all right? So if it gets to November 6th and you send me an email saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I totally forgot, then I'll say, I'm sorry, you just received a 0 on exam 2. So once again, I highly recommend that you do not wait until the last minute to take the exam. You have a pretty long time from October 29th to November 5th to take exam number 2. What's going to be on exam 2? In my book, it's chapters 5 through 10, so introduction of, 6 through 10. So off the top of my head, it goes sound, the introduction of sound, what else? Of course, American cinema, which we're going over today. Neorealism, which we're going to talk about next class. What am I missing here? Yes, exactly. So France, and then what's the other one? We'll figure it out. But yeah, so once again, exam number 2 will be on those chapters, so make sure you examine those chapters. And of course, everything is broken down on iCollege if you have any questions about anything. All right. I do want to mention the video essay extra credit opportunity one more time, so that I'll give a more detailed description of what the video essay is going to look like. But what you'll do, and I'll actually give you an example of a video essay at the end of class today. Sort of what I'm looking for. But once again, your video essay is essentially a paper that you put into video format. So there's an argument, and then you have examples that support your argument. So you have visual examples that support your argument. You always want to start off with a research question, right? And the example I always give is, how did the film Blade Runner, how was it heavily inspired by the film noir movement, right? That is a research question that you could have, and then you answer it. So the video essay is you answering that question, providing examples of how it is influenced by the film noir movement. And of course, if you have any questions about anything, you can always send me an email, and we can talk as well on Zoom. Just send me an email saying, can we talk about the extra credit opportunity? I'll say, no problem, and we can have a conversation about that if that's something you want to do. The video essay is due on November 17th. Once again, it's not due at the end of the semester, it's due November 17th. So if this is something that you want to do, this is your only extra credit opportunity, you need to start preparing for that now. Up to 5% extra credit on your total final grade, right? So it's kind of a big deal if you do end up doing it. But I will have a more detailed description of what I'm looking for. To kind of give you an idea, it needs to be relatively short video. You have an argument in the video, and then you have sources that back up your argument. So you need to research academic sources that back up what you're saying, and then you have to have illustrations. Whether it's actually taking clips from the film or just showing pictures of the film, that sort of thing. So if you want to just do a PowerPoint presentation with your voice over the PowerPoint presentation, you can do that as well. You can be as creative as you want. Any questions about that? Extra credit opportunity for you? Any questions about the exam? Exam 2? Yes?
Aren't the movies going to be on it?
Yeah, so there'll be several movies that will be on that. There might be a couple questions from the film. So
Is it gonna be all of them, or is it just gonna be some of them?
it'll be some of them.
Okay.
So Cycle will be on there, right? Zero for Conduct will be on there as well, right? Casablanca will be on there. It just so happens that all the films that I required in this class are on this exam two, like most of them are on exam two. For whatever reason, it just ended up being like that. I didn't think about that when I was, putting together my list for videos or films that I expect you to watch in their entirety. And they all tended to be on exam two. So that's just kind of the way it is. Yes.
For the extra credit opportunity, is that information in the syllabus or is there like a specific part of biology where we see?
It does elicit, it is on the syllabus, it kind of gives you a general description of what it is, but I will give you a more detailed assignment, guideline, rubric, here in the next couple days. I'll try to get that to you as soon as possible, because I know that deadline is coming up. Another reminder that we are changing the way the schedule looks. So previously, we were supposed to be here on November, or we had class on November the 3rd, Tuesday. That is election day, so I'm letting you, I'm not going to be here. I don't expect you to be here because I'll probably be waiting in line for a long time, looking to vote. I encourage you all to vote as well. So you don't have to be here for that. So that's the major change. Well, yeah, any other questions about anything? Questions, concerns about the exam or anything in general? Oh, I do want to bring up that I will be teaching media theory next semester. Media theory on Tuesday and Thursday. It's an upper class. It's a 4,000 level class. So I feel like I'm doing a promo. If you like me teaching this class, then you'll love me. So once again, media theory. Yes.
Will it be in person or online?
It will be blended. It'll be the way it is now. We'll see. It's still kind of up in the air how it's going to be. What do you think? Would you rather it be blended or would you rather it be online?
I can't do online.
You can't do online?
I can't do
I
online.
respect you so much for having it in person.
Okay, so you want the face to face. It makes sense that the people who are here want it to be face to face. That makes perfect sense. I'll be it. So that will be next semester, media theory. And as much as I know a little bit about film, although I know more about American film than international cinema. I know way more about media theory. So that's kind of my forte. So we'll talk about the internet. We'll talk about video games, that sort of thing. It'll be a good time, right? All right. All right. First question. I just want to know how your classes are going. This is mostly to kind of start conversation, but I also want to hear what you think are some positives and negatives of what other teachers are doing. That way I can learn from that when I'm putting together my class for next semester. Yes, go ahead.
I understand that with everything online, you're just trying to make sure that your students are doing their work, but I do not understand why you take the pleasure in giving me like countless like worksheets to do, like just like worksheets to do, like all just busy work that doesn't pertain to my education.
So do you feel like you have a lot of teachers that are just giving busy work? Do you feel like that's
Yeah,
the,
they're just giving busy work just to give busy work for the sake of like, oh,
yeah.
we put grades in, so like here's something that you should do. And I'm like,
Here's the thing about busy work. Then I gotta grade it. I don't want to do that. That's busy work for me. Why would I give work for me? I don't want to do that. All right, so that's one major concern that you're feeling right now. You're feeling a lot of teachers. I know why they're doing it. It's because they're afraid if they don't do that, then you're not going to do anything. Like you're gonna zone out, and you're gonna do poorly on the papers or the exams. That's the general concern. So I understand why they're doing that. But once again, that puts more work on the teacher. And that's not something that I do not want to do.
it's
I
so
was going to say, I dropped probably 20 classes in the 2 weeks leading up just because every time sections switched to online, I wasn't doing that.
Yeah, I am, I am the only person in my department. Like I am by myself.
Yeah, you're the fifth one of these classes.
It is a ghost town when I'm walking around campus.
king.
Right.
King.
So what was that? What did you say? King? What is this?
I was like, you're taking over the team, a king.
Oh, okay. Is that what that means?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you just say king,
It just says king.
it means good job.
Yeah.
Yay! King. All right. so, right, so you're feeling like too many professors are going online.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, what else? What's going on?
I feel like because we're all online and we're not in a classroom setting, teachers are like, I guess they're underestimating how much work they're giving us.
Yeah.
And like she said, like busy work, but not necessarily busy work. It's just like actual work, but it's like way too much at a time. Like
Okay.
we don't get enough time, and we also have like other classes where they're also giving us busy work.
What do you mean? Do you mean like is it too much reading, too much
Like
too many
I
assignments?
have one class where I have to read like I don't know 50 pages every week,
Mm-hmm.
and then do like a quiz or a test every other week, and it's like a lot, and it's very time consuming.
So
And
too many readings, too many assignments,
yeah, and
that
like
sort
we're
of thing.
fine with reading, but like they're dropping so much work on us at a time that it's
Mm-hmm.
like difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have to study for your actual test because you're like too busy doing this work
Yeah.
to do your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
I feel like one of the things that I like about the blended class is that like we get to see you in person, and then when something's going on in class, you can kind of explain it to us.
Yeah.
And I feel like with online, one of the problems is like a lot of teachers, they have a lot of information to give us about what's going on, so they kind of just dump it all like on the
Yeah.
iCollege, and then you have to read like paragraph after paragraph about what you're going to do this week and next week and the week after, and then I just get overwhelmed.
And it's so easy to miss stuff.
Yeah,
But when
I
you
miss
come
like
in,
tests because it's so unorganized.
let me ask you this question, and I'll get more things from advice from everybody. But does anyone have a teacher where they're online, but you feel like they're doing it well? Like whether they're maybe it's via Zoom or Teams, you know.
Yeah, so just she like posts clips on the Easy Way Elementary website.
Okay.
It actually like teaches like you in person.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yes.
I'm only in ed studies class. I think that's like we basically do everything across Zoom, and so it's just like it's a lot easier because she's very like I don't know responsive and quick with her responses. You know, even if you email her, a lot of teachers they'll wait like really
before they respond though.
Do you feel like because I've taught a couple classes via Zoom. And the way I like to do it is I like to try to simulate the classroom as much as possible. So I ask people to turn the cameras on. I ask questions. I expect students to answer the question. That's kind of how I do it now. I know you can't always do it that way for different classes, but does anyone have a class like that where they feel like they're doing a good
no,
job?
I know classes
I
where
wish.
like it's
Honestly,
like centralized.
I have one class that's like that, and
Okay.
the reason why it's straight is because she gives us like she has once she opens up the test, not the test, the work when the week is there. So it's not all of the information. So you can't like go ahead and
Oh.
no one's ahead, so you have to do it by each week.
So she holds the readings until like the week of. So it's not like
Exactly.
overload.
But the thing is, it's a mixture of reading and her lecturing.
Mm-hmm.
But the lectures are like 5 minutes each, and she breaks it up very well. And so I've gotten 100 on every single quiz because she gives the information in like in stages, and then it progresses. So it's never like just a full textbook reading, and that's why I feel like I'm doing well in her class.
Is it Zoom? Is it Teams? What
No,
are
it's no
teachers
Zoom.
using?
It's no Zoom at all. It's literally just lectures.
Oh,
That's
okay.
it.
I
Okay.
feel like if it's gonna be online, it has to be asynchronous and broken up like that.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't replicate the classroom through,
Mm.
you know, it has to be completely asynchronous so people can work on it at their own
Interesting.
I
speed.
agree.
Interesting. Yes.
Oh,
It also like the thing that's really pissed me off about this whole entire thing is that like you have to like buy textbooks, but now because everything's online, like teachers are like, oh, you can't use a PDF because you have to do the homework in the textbook, like in a program. So
Hmm.
it scams you into paying for a textbook you're only gonna use it for a semester, and then your
exactly.
Yeah.
teacher doesn't have to do anything because all like the assignments are like from the textbook itself,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
and
so you're so
they'll be making us pay for Connect, and then
Yeah.
yeah, and
they don't even grade
yeah,
us.
you gotta buy
Like,
Connect. Like
yeah.
she gotta spend $150
yeah,
on it.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
it's just
Yeah.
trying to like
70.
make my wallet
Yeah.
want to scream.
Yeah,
question. Hypothetically, I know you, it seems like you're sort of against this idea, but what if, hypothetically, I did teach synchronously, via like Zoom or Teams? I know Georgia State, they don't have a patent or whatever you want to call it, an agreement with Zoom, so I can't use like the premium Zoom, which is what you need to use. You can't use the regular Zoom for this. But so if I use premium Zoom where we all have cameras on, I'm asking questions in class, students are answering. It's more like it's trying to simulate the classroom as much as possible. I know there's a lot of things you can't. But the positive thing about this is I can actually do everything I'm doing now, where I'm reminding people about assignments. I'm keeping people up to date with changes to the syllabus, right? So you kind of do this thing. Is that something that could work, or what do you think about that?
In a perfect world, yes, but half that class is going to be weirdos with their microphones on.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I feel like that could work, but the thing about it is the thing that really kind of helps with the blended classes like this is that like you sign up for college and then like you gotta give them like a bunch of money and then you gotta buy all these books and then all this Corona happens and then all of a sudden you can't go to class anymore and it's all online. It's kind of disheartening a little bit.
I can
You put
definitely
so
see
much
that.
time into trying to get in and trying to like pay for it, and now you don't really get to experience it the way you should. So these blended classes kind of give you a little bit more of a like motivation to like go in and do it and do your work because you kind of get reminded of what you're missing and what you need to get back later.
I know it appears that everything's going to be kind of the same in the spring. Like it's going to be the way it was this semester in the spring. Yes, go ahead.
I was like, I have like no motivation at all.
Yeah, that's what I completely understand. Like I get it. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm telling you, this class, like going to this class twice a week is the only thing that gives me structure.
Thank you.
It's
I
like,
was saying
it's the only thing like,
everything else feels so optional. But
It's,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's like if it doesn't go on the calendar, I just don't get around to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it gives me structure too. Like, I mean, people are always asking me because I commute for 2 hours here and back, and they're saying,
Every Tuesday and Thursday.
every Tuesday and Thursday, like, why are you doing this? You could just easily be at home doing this online. And I tell them, I enjoy the commute now. Like, I enjoy driving here, but
literal king right here.
right, I'm the prince of it all. But yes. So yeah, I know we talked for a long time about this, but this is very useful to me to know this going forward when I'm teaching media theory. And of course, you run into another problem with 50% capacity. I have another class where there's only 40 people in that class, and I probably have 3 people who show up every day. So that makes me just not want to come. Like so, there's that as well.
We're not fake. We're not fake like
But,
that.
We're all very
We're always
consistent.
here.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I appreciate that. And of course, I don't want to downplay the seriousness of the pandemic and the coronavirus. Obviously, I don't want to do that. There's health concerns and there's serious issues with that. So I don't want to downplay that as well. But I understand the situation that you're in.
I just feel like at least like make the tuition like lower. And like
Yeah.
I had to pay for transportation costs, room and board, and standing board because that's different from housing, and all these things that would require me to be like on campus, but I'm not, and these are extra fees, and so it's like at least can I get my refund for
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
It helped.
it's like you pay full price for like a quarter of the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're in high school, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it
High
was.
school, is that what it feels like?
It's just like senior year part 2.
Stop, stop,
So, so what's going on over there?
It hit home too hard.
Like the senior year part 2.
Well, that's right. Are many of you freshmen?
Yeah.
So yeah, your senior year was kind of ruined, right?
Yeah.
Completely cut off.
That's you didn't get to go to. What about prom?
Prom.
You did prom.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Senior
Graduation.
graduation, no
you
prom.
didn't get to prom it up. All right, let's go ahead.
PowerPoint presentation as our graduation.
Although all this is information was very helpful. We did talk for a long time, so let's go ahead and skip number 2. We'll do question number 2 for next time. What genres were popular during this time period? All right, so now we're kind of back in the classroom mode here. All right, so we talked about American cinema in the post-war era. We started beginning of chapter 7, 8, 9, whatever. This chapter, and we're finishing up that chapter now. We're going to be focusing primarily on Alfred Hitchcock because there's a couple films that we can do some fun film analysis, some discussions about some of these films. But what other genres were popular during this time period? Yes? Science fiction. Yeah, this is when science fiction as a genre is starting to develop, and it sort of makes sense, right? During this historical moment, because you're starting to see these huge advancements in science. The atomic bomb is the first one that comes to mind, and this idea that technology, or this fear, this anxiety, that technology is sort of changing who we are as a people, and that anxiety often manifests in the science fiction genre. What other genres are we seeing here in this time period? Yes? Westerns, most certainly. Yeah, the Western. Right. Was that?
Musical.
The musical. This is the golden age of the musical, right? We're going to show several of those clips. West Side Story. What else are we showing? Others? Singing in the Rain. Yes? Comedy, yeah, of course. You still got some comedy as well. The melodrama was big during this time period, and we'll show a clip from one of those types of films. Let's go ahead and talk about Alfred Hitchcock. Who is Alfred Hitchcock, and how did he influence cinema? Who is Alfred Hitchcock?
Director.
He is a director. Yes, fantastic. We got it down. That's all we need to know.
Yes. White man director.
Yes, that's true.
The master.
There wasn't that many white male directors during this time period. That's sarcasm. That was sarcasm.
Shower scene.
The shower scene from Psycho. All right. I like where we're going here. We're steamrolling here.
I only watched it through the YouTube somehow. Before I watched the actual movie.
What else? What else about Alfred Hitchcock? Yes.
He's a master of suspense.
Okay, the master. What does that mean?
Like he knew how to like play with the audience and kind of like get them invested and like build up the suspense, and then he also knew like the perfect moment when to drop the mask kind of and like show you what's going on.
During this time period, horror before this was often considered to be this like surface level kind of generic B films, like you think about like the Universal monsters, that sort of thing. But with Alfred Hitchcock, now we're starting to see the horror genre as being this almost prestigious, elite type of cinema, an art form, rather than just being a film to entertain people. You're starting to see people interpret this, and this is where auteur theory. Alfred Hitchcock is like the main dude with auteur theory. Does anyone want to know what auteur theory is? Yes.
Isn't that the one where it's like the director is the writer?
Yeah. This is the belief when you're analyzing a film, you're critiquing a film, whatever. It's this belief that the director is the main author of the film, like that the director gets the most credit for the film. Although there's various people involved, the scriptwriter, the actors, that sort of thing, producer. Auteur theory is this belief that the director is the primary artistic talent, right? You can judge how good an auteur is by how many good films the director has put forward, right? That's kind of the idea with auteur theory. And Alfred Hitchcock is the prime example. It's what people who believe in auteur theory often quote Alfred Hitchcock. Can anyone think of any other contemporary auteurs, directors that we might assume to be like auteurs? Quentin Tarantino is the main one that comes to mind, right? That's the one. Well, and often because Tarantino, he writes his films and he pretty much does everything. What were we going to say? Christopher Nolan is the other one, right? Any others? Yes.
Jim Jarmusch.
Martin Scorsese would be another one. Yes.
Jim Jarmusch.
Okay. Yeah. Great example. Yes.
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson is another great example, right? So this idea that the director. Yes. Go ahead.
Paul Thompson.
Okay. Yeah. What movie did he direct?
Wayne.
Oh yeah. Great. Excellent. Great.
A newer one is Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele could be considered an auteur as well. Excellent. Great. Yes.
Just like,
Who's that?
it's like,
Spike Lee, most certainly. Great. Good. All right, so let's go ahead, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to show the opening sequence to one of Alfred Hitchcock's films. Not a lot of people, this is one of his most popular films. It happens to be my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film. It's a film called Rope. And I want to show the opening sequence. Well, I want you to put your film analysis caps on because with Alfred Hitchcock, there you go, put it on, get it tight, strap it, yeah, make it a little tighter than that. Right, so a lot of people who analyze Alfred Hitchcock films, he often deals with Freudian psychoanalysis. Is anyone familiar with psychoanalysis?
Yes, I watched Criminal Minds.
You watch Criminal Minds, you know it. It's down pat. Can anyone give me like a general like description of what psychoanalysis is? Freudian psychoanalysis.
Isn't it like analyzing like the mind?
Yeah. Like analyzing in terms of like the unconscious.
Yeah, that's
What we repress in the unconscious. And Alfred Hitchcock often deals with this the unconscious mind and what we want to repress. And I want to show an opening sequence. This is from the rope. We can put our film analysis caps on and then have a discussion. What did you like about this? What did you find interesting about this clip? But here it is. And of course, oh yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention, did everybody get my message on iCollege saying that my YouTube videos are now being blocked for copyright issues? No. So, yeah,
Those copyright
yeah, for copyright reasons. So I actually talked to a couple people about this, and they said what's happening now is there are bots on YouTube, and they'll listen to your videos, and if for example, Steamboat Willie, if they hear Steamboat Willie, which Disney did, and they block that, then they'll block it. But yeah, so just want to let everybody know that this could be blocked, right? So if you're watching live, then it's not going to be blocked. But here we go. This is the opening sequence to Rope.
Don't. Got to see this. I know. Not just yet. Let's stay this way for a minute. Don't have too much time. It's the darkness that's got you down. Nobody ever feels really safe in the dark. Nobody who's ever a child, that is. I'll open these, all right? There, that's much better.
All right, so let's talk about this. Oh, that's an interesting. things that you notice about this scene?
I guess the way it starts is it seems very serene. It's a good contrast, and you're seeing like the light colors, the pretty buildings, and then you hear the scream.
Yeah, great. What else?
Also, the angle should be noted as well. Like it was a very like you feel like you're seeing everything. I guess of that particular spot.
Okay.
So you see the cars, you see the people walking, like what she said is it's like a regular day, and then you look into the window and you know what's about to happen.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. So the opening sequence, we start and we as a viewer are sort of like looking out on a rooftop, right? On a rooftop, perhaps. Yeah, so it's sort of the audience's viewpoint. So we're almost essentially like a character in the film. And then the film then pans into, we enter in this house. Right? Almost like we are a character in the film that now are entering into this house where someone is being murdered. Either we are a witness to a murder, like we weren't intending to be a witness to a murder, or that we were an accomplice to this murder. Yes.
It almost felt like symbolism. You know, when we were talking about analysis, like it's kind of like how on the outside you can't really tell what's going on, but like as soon as we went into the room, it's like it's very dark and it's not something you want to see. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's very jarring.
Yeah.
Right. What else? What else do we notice in this? Yeah.
I really thought this out in my head, so I'm gonna try to say it.
Go for it. That's the best. That's the best thoughts.
So, like, I feel like when you're looking down at the street, like as a viewer, um, like you feel like you know what's going on, but like you're kind of in control,
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking down on people. And then once it kind of pans towards the window, you kind of like lose that power and knowledge of what's going on. And as a viewer, now like you're the one that's in question, and now you kind of feel like the people that are walking on the street, I guess, if that makes sense. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
I like that. That's good. Fantastic. Yeah.
I have a question. Is
Yeah.
this like a one shot movie where it's like the same shot the whole time?
Yeah, so this is a long take movie, right? So this is one of the very first long takes. Now he does kind of sneak in some cuts,
Okay.
but yeah, this is supposed to be like a long take.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
The most impressive example of that is, have you seen 1917?
Yeah.
Part of the film.
So it's directed very similar. So if you see 1917, where it's supposed to seem like one long take, almost like simulating this feeling that you are a part of the film and there's no escape from the film. That's very similar to what's going on here in Rose, where you are almost a character in the film, and maybe you're an accomplice to this murder, and maybe you can't get out of this. Yes.
Another thing is like the actual murder itself is very short. They, like you go into the rooms, the guy gets killed, they put him in the chest, and there's like a really long pause of them just like sitting there, like catching their breath afterwards. And that's like another thing that I always think of when I watch Hitchcock. It's like he would build up the suspense, and then the actual event that you want to see, he would show you like very little of it, and it'd be really quick. Like
Yeah. Right. Great. Right. Excellent. Yes.
Can I make a quick point?
Yeah. Go for it. Go for it. Let's talk about how weird this murder scene is, because I think it's weird on purpose. Let's talk about what makes this murder scene so weird. Yes.
How the sorry. How quickly that happened, right? Is like yeah, them panicking at first, and then it's like, oh, it's back to normal, you know?
Okay.
Like he's like, oh, he's trying to like, I don't know, spare the other guy's thoughts from the actual murder to like, oh, it's just the next day, it's just the darkness that's getting down. Like, forget about the murder, you know?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
this weird thing that showing some sunlight is going to make him feel better, right?
Yeah.
About the murder. Yes.
I felt like the murder wasn't even like the focal point of the scene. Like, and that's like the very jarring part. Is like, oh, we just saw a man get killed, but like we're like really like focused on like the characters' reactions when they kill the guy.
Let's talk about the characters' reactions, because their weird reactions reaction, right? It's a weird reaction to a murder. Let's talk about this.
It felt like obviously, like it felt like there was like a dominant force, which was like the guy in the right, and
Yes.
like the guy in the left was very like submissive. So it kind of felt like, oh, you have like your textbook definition of what a psychopath is, and then on the left you have your textbook definition of what like a sociopath is. And so like when you see like the, let's say like the psychopath like archetype like open the windows and be like, oh my god, like everything's fine, like it was like you're more focused on like how their reactions and how their archetypes are like playing in with each other as they literally just killed this guy.
Yeah, great. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like, not even to piggyback off what you just said, like I feel like you see it often in movies where when it's two like bad guys, there's usually one that's more submissive than
Okay.
the other, and I feel like one of them always feels kind of pressured, and usually the end of the movie ends up like leaving their job because they feel like they're morally incorrect. But I also felt like this was weird because not only was the vibe weird of the scene.
What do you mean by the vibe weird? Keep going.
I just feel like this is not a setting where you would kill someone.
Okay.
And then also just like I said, their reactions just like it just felt weird. Like why would
What do you mean by weird? Let's describe the reactions.
I feel like when you kill someone, you're not gonna be like
Yeah, it
let's
was
hurry
very
up and kill.
yeah.
Like that was so weird.
Yes.
Yeah, usually I think when somebody commits a murder, their first instinct is to figure out a way to like get away with it or get rid of the body and like figure out a way to make sure it's not traced back to them so that
Yeah.
they get off scot free.
Great. I think you're all on the right track here, but let's dive into this. But what makes this so weird? Why is it such a weird reaction? What describe their reactions to the murder? Yes.
They seem like remorseful at first, but then there's like a quick switch where it's like, okay, it's fine. And that's the scary part.
Yeah.
To me, it's like the weird thing is like the way they killed him at first. Like he's standing right in the middle of them, and like one guy's holding him up, and the other guy's like just tying the rope around his neck. And then all of a sudden he dies, and then they're just cool with it. Like he was standing right next to them. He was, and they just murdered him and threw him in some box. And then like all of a sudden this other guy's like, "Can we open the window?" It's just, I feel like the weird part is the way they kill him. Like they're so up close to him, and they're so like personal with him. Like
Yeah,
they're standing
it's
right
very,
next to
yeah,
him.
it's very,
They've got like their arms around him almost, and like then all of a sudden he opens the window. So not only did he kill the guy, but he was like right in his face when he did it.
yeah, you're all saying very correct things, yes.
I mean, my impression is that it's not the first time they've probably killed somebody.
Okay.
The way that they reacted.
Let's talk about the closeness, the intimacy. Smoking a cigarette afterward, being out of breath. Where am I going with this? It's depicted as sexual,
Yeah.
right? It's depicted as an ecstasy.
If you say it out loud, it kind of is.
And I mean, it's important to know, like, we're going to talk about the Hays Code.
I didn't catch on guard. Yeah.
You're okay? Hold on.
I'm just waiting. Oh, they had a sexual relationship.
I saw it. I saw
Yeah.
it.
Don't.
Like literally.
All right.
Telling you.
So, during this time period, we talked about the Hays Code, right? And in terms of there were certain things that you couldn't depict in film during this time period, and directors had to find ways around it. So oftentimes characters were coded, right? And this scene is coded in many different ways, right? The murder is almost coded as this sexual act, right? This deviant sexual act. They're out of breath. He smokes a cigarette afterward, which is his code for sex, right? Look how close the characters are to each other. They're out of breath, huddled next to each other. I mean, I think you know where I'm going with this, right? They're coded. It's coded as homosexual, right? And obviously, during this time period, you couldn't have openly gay characters in film, but you would often code them as homosexual, right? And You can look at this in two different ways, right? Because I think this is deliberate by Alfred Hitchcock. He intentionally codes these men as gay and as this almost this sexual deviant blurring of the boundary between gay sex and murder. Right, that's clear. That line is being blurred there. So when you look at this film, you could say either Alfred Hitchcock was, homophobic, right? Or Alfred Hitchcock knows that society is homophobic and is using that as a way of making this even weirder, creepier, more deviant, right? So this is a lot of times when people analyze films by Alfred Hitchcock, they're often looking at sort of these coded messages, these unconscious messages that are being depicted in these films. Right? Did anyone else want to say anything before we move on? Yes.
It also felt kind of sterile. It felt like it was too clean.
There's no blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, the way that they're dressing, they wouldn't seem like the people who would commit a murder, nonetheless, be so up and close and personal, and they're wearing nice clothes and all that stuff. You would assume that they would hire someone to do the killing and do the dirty work, but it's so intimate that they're doing the dirty work that it would make sense that they were doing the dirty work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a good analogy here in terms of blurring that boundary between doing the dirty work, two dudes doing some dirty work, versus two dudes killing somebody, some dirty work, and that line's being blurred there. And obviously, this is sort of invested in homophobia, right?
It could be even just comparing murder is as equivalent to two guys doing what they do behind windows.
Right, two dudes just having fun. Yes.
Piggybacking off of Oliver, it's even the gloves. It's it basically how how they're hiding it almost, and how it's
Okay, yeah, great.
this is not leaving any evidence,
Yeah, great, excellent. Great discussion, fantastic. Let's move on. So let's talk about some popular genres during this time period. This is the beginning of the exploitation film genre popularity. Does anyone tell me what exploitation films are? Yes, go ahead.
They're kind of like cheap movies, and they're kind of just made to cash in on a trend going on.
Yeah, low budget, kind of not very complex stories, usually sexually explicit content.
There's a lot of monster movies at the time.
Monster movies.
Monster movies were huge.
Excellent. Yeah.
Geared for drive-ins generally.
They're intended for drive-ins. They're usually intended for young adult audiences to kind of entice people to come out. Right. That's the whole. This is this idea of targeting specific audience segments. Right. And exploitation films certainly did that. They usually had no major stars. Often deal with sexual content, science fiction, cheap horror, that sort of thing. I do want to show a clip from, this is Attack of the Crab Monsters, 1956.
It's no good shooting things. The bullets pass through it just like X-rays.
So, you have a mission. I must grow a new claw. Well and good, for I can do it in a day. But will you grow new lives when I have taken yours from you?
So the thing that I always find funny about this clip is, it's a crab, just say his shell's hard. Why is it passing through the crab?
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, moving on. That's the thing that bothers me about this clip. All right, so that was Attack of the Crab, Monsters, whatever. Moving on to the Western. Here is Shane. Has anyone seen Logan?
Yeah.
Logan is heavily inspired by Shane. This is the closing sequence from Shane.
Joe, there's no living with a kid. There's no going back. Right, wrongs, right. The guy that sticks. There's no going back. Now you run on home to your mother and tell her everything's all right. There aren't any more guns in the town.
Shane. It's bloody. You're hurt.
I'm all right, Tilly. You go home to your mother and your father and grow up to be strong and straight. Take care. Both of you.
I've never been able to shoot you if you'd have seen him.
Sorry, Joe.
He's never able to clear the holster, would he, Shane? I've got things for you to do. And his mother wants you. I know she does. Shane! Shane! Come back!
All right, that was Shane, example of Western. Up next, we have melodrama. Do I have this set up here? Yeah, I do. All right, so Imitation of Life, we're going to show a clip from that film, 1959. It dealt with issues of race, class, and gender. At the time, it was often depicted as kind of like just a generic soap opera. Later on, film critics often consider it to be sort of like progressive in terms of showing America's like racist culture. It was later praised by capturing the 50s era racism. I want to show this clip from Imitation of Life. So this film often dealt with issues of what it meant to be a black American. And during this time, it was often considered to be what was like the one drop rule, right? So if you had any sort of African American heritage, you were considered to be black, right? There was this racist idea that any sort of blackness was undesirable. And this film often deals with this, where you have a woman who is passing as white. I want to show this clip. It's a very powerful clip. It does depict I believe it has the N word in it, so I just want to let everybody know that. Here is Imitation of Life.
Frankie, you're late. I thought you'd never get here. Let's walk down by the river. I want to talk to you.
We can talk here.
Frankie, I'm having trouble at home.
Your mother.
Yes. Frankie, you said you wanted to take a job in Jersey. Couldn't we run away? I'd do anything to be with you. Anything.
That's not a bad idea at all. Just tell me one thing.
Yes?
Is it true?
It's not true.
Is your mother a nigger? Tell me!
What difference does it make? You love
All
me.
the kids talking behind my back.
No.
Are you blind?
No, I'm as smart as you are. I'm not.
Yes.
Is she white? Is the actress white?
That's a great question. I don't know the heritage of the actress. Yeah.
Because that's, I don't know if that's mixed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, she
Are you
looks,
saying she's white? Is that what you're
She
saying?
looks white.
she
Okay.
looks like 75 white.
Okay.
That's okay. She said she looked black.
Well, then, see, I mean, and that's kind of, and that's sort of like the racist ideology during this time period. If you did have any sort of African American heritage, you were ostracized in the white community. So, yes.
I felt so bad for laughing. It was
Is it the music? Are you laughing at the music?
music choice.
Yeah. The music's weird. The music choice is very weird.
It was just so awkward, like the music choice. That was like he literally said the hard R.
All right, so let's do something a little more lighthearted. All right, so now we're talking about musicals.
Take care of that truck. You're a big film star now, remember? This California tune is just a little heavier than usual tonight.
Really? From where I stand, the sun is shining all over the place. Singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. The sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing in the rain.
You're enjoying it?
Okay.
All right, so up next we have the historical epic. This is The Ten Commandments, 1956, with Charlton Heston. This one is notable for its huge budget. A lot of that went into the special effects. In this particular scene where the sea is parted, and here it is.
Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Fill your fire, big Enterprise. Come on. Do it! You cannot reach the fire, brother. Gather your families and your flocks. We must follow those speakers. Go where? Drown in the sea? Out with the fire, old Pharaoh back. After this day, you shall see his chariots no more. No! You'll be dead under them. The Lord of hosts will do battle for us. Behold his mighty hand.
Oh, they used Jello? Nice. Little trivia for you. I know we laughed at that scene, but we're probably going to be laughing about Avengers Endgame in 30 years. Just so everybody's aware about that. All right, so let's move on to the science fiction genre. This is The Fly. The first Fly, 1958. Let's see if we can. Oh, here it is.
It's good work.
There you go. So that was the Fly. Moving on to let's go ahead and talk about Alfred Hitchcock now. English film director, master of generating suspense. Like was said, he's often used as evidence of auteur theory. Most influential and studied director in film history. He directed over 50 feature films. So the Hitchcockian style, as they often call it, often deals with different camera works that mimic a personal gaze. So, like we mentioned with Rope, where it's supposed to simulate a personal gaze, either from one of the characters or you as an audience member, in order to kind of get the audience in the film a bit more suspenseful. Alfred Hitchcock often studied Freudian psychoanalysis, so he was well aware of psychoanalysis and the unconscious, and often used that when in directing his films. He often explored unconscious desires and fears. He's often criticized for his depiction of women. He often had blonde, white women who were often either killed or humiliated. They were often like the main victim in all his films. I do want to show a film analysis of Psycho. This is a great example of a film analysis that you can make. This is describing a Freudian concept called the uncanny. And the uncanny is this idea of something that is familiar but also not familiar. And that's where the eeriness comes into play. Like it's something that seems like it should be familiar, but it's not. And that creates this fear or this anxiety in the audience. So the uncanny valley is something that, does anyone know what the uncanny valley is? What is that?
So it's kind of like when it's like, with like robots and stuff.
Yes.
They start to look like us, like how, like the Sophia robot, what's her name?
Yeah.
How that's kind of how it freaks you out a bit, because it's kind of close
Yeah.
to what he's playing, but it's like slightly off, and it makes it like really.
Yeah, it creates this eerie sensation, right? This uncanniness, right? And I mean, there's several different examples of uncanny. My uncanniness, one of the examples I always use when I'm describing what uncanny is to students is, have you ever gone to a movie theater and you rip your ticket and you go into like the section to where all the movies are actually at? So you pass the snack section, right? And you go into the theater, and then you see this random snack section that's dark and there's no one there. Isn't that weird? And to me, that's uncanny. That freaks me out when I see that every time. Or have you ever seen pictures of an amusement park that are empty?
Oh, yeah.
Let me see if I can. Let's see if I can find one. So, where's a good one? Stop it. So someone like that, or like this. Oh, The Lion King is a great example. Yeah, fantastic, great example. All right, so here's a film analysis pairing the uncanny Freudian psychoanalysis and Psycho. Warning, if you haven't seen Psycho, spoilers. All right, but here you go.
It's not as if she were a maniac, a raving thing. She just goes a little mad sometimes.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Haven't you?
Psycho is the film that's probably most associated with Alfred Hitchcock. It's certainly his most successful film, and he made it relatively late in his career, 1960. With its then shocking depictions of sex and violence, Psycho completely revolutionized the horror and thriller genres. And if you haven't seen it, stop this video now and go watch it, because yes, it really is as good as your film friends say it is, and I'm about to spoil the whole thing right now. Quick recap. Psycho begins when Marion, a secretary played by Janet Leigh, impulsively steals a large sum of money from the office where she works, hoping that this will help her marry her boyfriend Sam. While trying to put distance between herself and this crime, she stops at a motel run by Norman, a repressed young man under the thumb of his domineering mother. In the by now famous shower scene, we see what appears to be Mother stabbing Marion to death in a fit of jealous rage. But the subsequent investigation actually reveals that it was Norman who did the killing, Mother being his Oedipal alter ego. One of the strange things about Psycho as a film is that there's no single protagonist to carry the bulk of the plot. At first it seems like the psycho in question might actually be Marion, as she flees with increasing paranoia from the repercussions of her crime. But when she's suddenly killed off, the film abruptly switches its focus completely, from her theft to her murder. For a lot of critics and theorists, this whole Marion story is basically just a red herring, an elaborate setup by Hitchcock in order to make the sudden murder all the more shocking when it happens. But personally, I think that explanation is pretty thin. From start to finish, Marion's story is about 45 minutes long, taking up over a third of the total film time. If you've ever watched a procedural from Law and Order to Poirot, you'll know this is an absurdly long time to set up what is essentially a backstory for your murder victim. So why is so much attention given to Marion at all? Why do we need to devote a third of the film's time to a setup that seemingly has nothing to do with the murder or the murderer? To understand this, we're going to have to take a quick detour to the field of psychoanalysis. Now, Hitchcock's fascination with psychoanalysis is pretty common knowledge at this point, and nowhere are his Freudian themes more overt than in Psycho, a film academics often refer to as the first psychoanalytic thriller. Norman's sexual fixation on his mother is the most obvious Freudian element, but there's also the way that 3 levels of the Bates home, top floor, ground floor, and basement, mirror Freud's 3 levels of the human subconscious, superego, ego, and id, respectively. But to really decode Psycho, we're going to have to turn to a lesser-known Freudian concept, the uncanny. The uncanny, or unheimlich in the original German, literally meaning unhomely, is a concept coined by Freud to describe the feeling of unease you get when you experience something familiar as suddenly unfamiliar, like seeing a teacher outside of school or visiting an empty museum in the middle of the night. That is, something commonplace seen in a way that is suddenly strange. Freud was particularly interested in literature and the recurring motif of the uncanny double, or doppelganger. That is, someone or something that is disconcertingly like the self, and yet completely separate from it. Uncanny doubles can be found all over the horror genre, taking the form of mirrors, shadows, dolls, dummies, and mannequins, mummies, ghosts, zombies, robots and clones, even twins. Freud would argue that all these creepy figures are creepy because they are like the self, and yet threateningly other. In Psycho, we get an uncanny double in the form of Mother, Norman's alter ego. But what's easier to miss is that Norman and Marion are also set up as uncanny doubles of each other. Their names contain mostly the same letters, in a deliberate change from the original novel. And in most of their interactions, we can see a carefully placed mirror in the background, suggesting that they are, in fact, mirroring each other. In his reading of the film, Slavoj Žižek writes, Marion's world is the world of contemporary American everyday life, whereas Norman's world is its nocturnal reverse. The relationship between these two worlds is that of the two surfaces of a Mobius strip. If we progress far enough on one surface, all of a sudden we find ourselves on its reverse. In other words, Marion and Norman's seemingly separate stories are not separate at all. They're complementary and cyclical, like day and night. And it's only by looking at the two together that you can begin to understand the film as a whole. So how does Hitchcock turn Marian's story into Norman's story? Well, let's look at a scene early in the film where Marian's driving to the Bates Motel, imagining what her boss will say when he finds out she's stolen the money.
After all, Cassidy, I told you, all that cash. I'm not taking responsibility. For heaven's sake, girl works for you for 10 years, you trust her.
What's going on in this scene? Well, a number of things. Up until this point, the film has been shot in a realist style, very cut and dry. But now we're hearing Marian's thoughts in the form of voiceovers, which suggest that we're moving to a more subjective experience of how she perceives the world. And this subjectivity is reinforced by changes in the cinematography. For instance, earlier in the film, scene transitions are marked by fades, which is classic film speak for time passed in between these two shots. But now, even though the sky outside the car is getting darker and darker, we're shown this in cuts, not fades, because Marian isn't aware of the time passing. The shots get tighter and tighter on Marian's face. The depth of field decreases, meaning that her surroundings become out of focus. The darkness and rain make it impossible to see anything out of the window. And the lighting shifts completely, from clear daylight to deep shadows and sharp contrasts. In a practical sense, Hitchcock is moving us from day to night. But in a stylistic sense, he's moving us from an apparently objective reality to a subjective, noirish, internal reality. He's effectively taking us from Marian's side of the Mobius strip to its uncanny nighttime flip side, Norman's world. And at the climax, Marian smiles and looks right at the viewer. Look familiar? So many people miss this. But when you see these two smiles side by side, you have to ask yourself, what is Hitchcock trying to tell us?
All right, that's it for today. That's a great example of a film essay using like sources to back it up, using illustrations to back up the argument. But yeah, all right, I will see you on Thursday. Have a good one, everybody.